you know, oh, perfect. All right. Now we can get started. All the other stuff said luckily was off the recording. Just really excited and honored to be speaking with all of you. And since we have it's all of us, feel free to unmute and interrupt. If I can be looking at the chat, but hopefully I'll be sharing my screen and we can make this as interactive as possible, and we can kind of go from there. I don't know if everyone already knows everyone, but maybe just doing a quick round of introductions would be really great. Just and kind of saying where you are. What if I know Daniel prefers being called Daniel. If folks have a preferred name to use, and then also just a little bit about their bio and their background as well. Because and maybe one or two things folks are looking to get out of this. I'm based here in the United States, and we've been working on trying to slowly crack away at an industry that is at many times adverse to using technology, particularly when it comes to resolving disputes, when it comes to integrating technology into the patient experience, into the clinical experience, into other ways, making determinations. We see that tech is much more open. But still in the dispute resolution process, in the dispute system design, we still see it's a little bit outdated. But we're also going to talk about ChatGPT, which may be a little elementary to some, or it may be brand new to others. So it'd be kind of great just to hear maybe one or two things you'd really be interested in learning, or maybe some things you already feel pretty um, 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 familiar with. So whoever wants to jump in first, I'm not going to cold call.
Okay, I'll go.
Okay.
So, yes, Bob Bergman, I'm CEO of Next Level Mediation. Just as some background, my background's been in primarily in technology, especially in decision science. And just to give you a framework, I was doing work in AI in 1966 when I was at MIT. So the concepts are not new. Um, we introduced in our software platform for dispute resolution AI around kind of the beginning of 2023, and have, of course, developed it since then to focus on specific needs, primarily to augment the skills of mediators, and act as an assistant, not to do things automatically. Um, and our focus, like I said, is to use it in well-defined and controlled ways. Um, I'm interested to see, listen to this conference on ODR in healthcare. Healthcare is an interesting area because most people think about disputes in healthcare, I think primarily as malpractice lawsuits or billing lawsuits. But if you think about it, the doctor patient relationship when giving out a care plan is essentially dispute resolution. It's a mediation between the doctor and the patient on how to provide a care plan that meets both needs. And so that's an area we've been looking at also. That give you some context.
That's great. Thanks, Bob. And
Sure.
great to see you again. Um,
Yeah, good to see you.
who wants to go next?
I'll go. So my career has been mainly in arbitration during 40 years and 25 years in ODR. In year 2000, I was invited by the ICC to build a platform to give access to the arbitrators and the parties to their cases online in real time. And at the beginning, I had turned down the offer because I said to the president of the court, I'm a lawyer, I'm not an engineer, I'm not interested in this, but thanks God, and I really bless him for having insisted because I discovered an entire fascinating world in ODR. And I met Ethan Katch and Colin Rule in year 2000. We were invited a rounded table by Gabrielle Kaufman-Koller. You may have heard about her, a famous arbitrator, very famous arbitrator. She gathered us because she wanted to have practitioners in dispute resolution and engineers sit around the table and discuss about how we can use technology to offer the users a faster way of accessing not only the information and their cases, but also to speed up the procedures. So that's how it all started. But then later, a few years later, I discovered that actually lots of disputes can be solved online, small disputes, to avoid denial of justice, because as we all know, unfortunately, the tribunals in all the courts, sorry, in all countries around the world are just there's a huge congestion. Do you say that congestion? There's a lot of backlog of cases waiting to be decided, and that if many of these cases, the majority actually of these cases, may be solved online, it's all the best, not only for the judges because they gain time, but also for the parties, and we avoid denial of justice. And we know today, unfortunately, that the number of denial of justice is just huge. And the reason for which it's not working, I was just mentioning this in an interview this morning, is multifold. Mainly because either the governments or the organizations don't think it's a priority. They don't want to invest in it, or once there's a project that has started and being implemented, not implemented, sorry, has been launched or started by a manager, the successor is not interested because it's not his baby and is going to throw away the entire project. And there's a lot of money, time, and energy wasted instead of potentially keeping the project on hold and trying to develop it. And many have done this mistake, many. I mean, companies, organizations, governments. So sometimes I keep saying, I started saying this back in 2010. I can't believe that in 2010 we can't get justice online. And I keep saying it every year. In 2025, we have everything online. We order sandwiches online, taxis online, everything online, and we can't give access to justice online. This is just sometimes making me really upset. We can do a lot, but if the governments, if those who really have the key to allowing these projects to work and to be accepted, to be not to be considered science fiction, are those who are stopping everything. So anyway, that's where I stand now. I retired 2 years ago, and I'm trying just to take time a bit for myself, but I'm still a little bit involved in ODR and in arbitration, mainly with my organization, Arbitral Women.
Oh, thank you, Mitza. My name is Daniel Dogo. I'm a retired teacher, but while I was teaching, I started what we call peer-to-peer mediation. There's a lot of conflict in schools, as you know. I was teaching in Dallas, and we saw a lot of conflict. So I was doing my master's at SMU, but we managed to kind of start teaching kids how to resolve their own issues, and it really worked very well. After I retired, I also joined Dallas County Courts, where we do pro bono. What we do these days, I don't know about other states, but here especially in Dallas, the judges have come up with this idea that if you're bringing a case, which is not a criminal case, the first offer is for you to go to mediation. So what the judges are doing are saying, you know what, you take your case to mediation. If you agree, all you need to do is send us your agreement and we'll file it. If you don't agree, then you have to come back to my court. So that's what we do. These cases are sent to us, and we pick them up if we have time. And we have so many different cases. We have divorce, we have children, we have breach of contract. So there are so many cases in these courts, and the courts are saying, you know what, we want to empower you as members of the public, learn to resolve your issues, because there is so many cases here and the courts can deal with it. Otherwise, it will take a long time. So we do that. We volunteer, but we volunteer. Now, from there, the state of Texas also came up with something they call surprise billing.
Mhm.
What is surprise billing? Surprise billing is where you go to the hospital and the hospital charges a certain amount of money, and the insurance company look at what you are charging, and they say, by the way, these codes you are putting in here, they don't really correspond with the disease or the ailment this person is. That's already a conflict. So what do we do? So what they do, they send us those cases, and we contact the facility and the health plan, and we try to resolve these cases. Um, it's a lot of there's a lot of work also there. There's a lot of things, but this is how the state is saying we don't want to be dealing with these cases now. If there is an impasse, that becomes a deal. They can go into arbitration or they can go to court. So that's what I usually do. These cases are sent to us by the state. We don't go looking for them. We have to be part of that. So we are there, and they are assigned to us arbitrary. It's not like we have to give this person this case. No. However many cases you get, those are your cases. The other thing I do community, as you know, most of you, a lot of our people have not really understood what is dispute resolution. Most people say, I'm going to sue you. I'm going to court. And the whole idea is most members of the community don't understand that it is cheaper and it is faster and it's even better because it's not going to be public there. But that is what we are trying to do, to teach people to understand, hey, you know what? You can resolve your issue without necessarily going to court. Because as you know, I know, Simon, you are a lawyer, but when it comes to lawyers, they are very confrontational.
Mm.
And we have, even when we are doing, this, when we are volunteering, you are allowed to bring your lawyer, but sometimes you find the lawyer want to take over. And as a mediator, you have to stop it and say, look here, this is not a trial. This is, we are discussing. So sometimes you find it can be very aggressive, but you have to slow it down and say, hey, look, let the people talk and let them resolve there. You are there as a lawyer, you can be there, but you cannot really come and take over. So basically, that is what I do. I'm here now in Sacramento, and I'm looking at California mediation. I've been able to connect with some people, and I'm looking at the state of California, how they are doing things and all that. So basically, that is what I do. Thank you.
That's great. Thank you so much, Daniel. And it seems like there's some overlap as well in some of the topics we'll be talking about, especially the hospital provider and patient negotiations. Other folks who also just kind of want to introduce themselves, provide a little background or things they want to get out of this, feel free to jump in. And if not, that is okay. I'm happy to, we won't cold call anyone, but we're happy to kind of just jump into things as well. So, let's start with the healthcare stuff, and I can provide a little bit of context about what my company currently does. And, this is going to take a little bit of a American perspective. It's where the company exists. It's where, I have a fair amount of familiarity. It would be great if folks also just unmute and also chime in and provide their own perspectives on this. So Billing Nav has been around for a little bit of time. And for the past 4 years, we've been working on essentially the payer, which is the insurance company, or in the United States, the employer, the folks that hold the group health plan or a type of insurance, and negotiate against a provider, which could be a hospital, It could be a hospital system. It could be also a professional service. So perhaps a single anesthesiologist, a single OBGYN, a single general practitioner. And so within the United States, there are all sorts of networks and there are all sorts of insurance plans. There are, self-insurance, and then there are fully insurance plans. I work in something called self-insurance, which is where, generally speaking, the employer has transferred the risk from a large insurance company, such as a Blue Cross Blue Shield, or a United, a Cigna, or an Aetna, and they themselves have taken on that risk. And that's why it's called self-insurance. And so within that kind of framework, folks go in to get care. And some of it is expected care. It is planned care. Folks go in for a shoulder operation, or they need some other kind of, an annual checkup. Or sometimes they have an emergency visit. And that creates kind of different ways for results and billing practices to happen inside the United States. And so one thing I'd really encourage folks to do a little bit of a dive on, or a little bit of a Google search on, is the No Surprises Act. And this was something under the Biden administration, that one of the few things in Washington, D.C. that had some bipartisan support was creating an arbitration process. And for our arbitration experts, this is more of a baseball style arbitration, where the provider or the hospital has to select one number, and then the payer selects one number. Folks are able to write briefs, submit evidence, and ultimately a certified IDR entity, or an independent dispute resolution entity, has to pick one of those numbers. And so one of the things our company does really well is handling those No Surprises Act. So first, and there's a lot of rules. It's a federal process. Feel free to jump in if you have any questions.
Mute.
Or perhaps on mute. That's okay. But feel free to, if folks have any kind of questions. So on the No Surprises Act as well, this is something where you're able to have an open negotiation notice. You're able to try to first, informally settle it. And a lot of this is used on there is no real centralized technology for this, except for email, fax, in minor cases, and then picking up the phone and calling folks. So this is a potential business opportunity, an area to explore, if you can get providers and the payers onto a single platform to resolve these disputes, rather than through an email process. But this is something that is required for out-of-network emergency room bills. So Daniel was talking about these surprise bills. This is exactly what the No Surprises Act addresses here inside the United States, is that, Daniel has flown from Dallas to Sacramento, and he makes a stumble and has to, he fractured a bone, and he goes to a Sacramento hospital. He is out of network. He's not in Dallas, or he's not in his home state of Texas. He's gone to California. He gets a surprise bill in the mail. That doesn't happen anymore. Under the No Surprises Act, the member is removed from that process. And so that's one of the processes for out of network surprise bills. Another one is balance bills, and I'm just going to share my screen here for a minute, where we've built a very basic, essentially, tool where Billing Nav, and this kind of speaks to how old school the technology is within the payer and the provider relationship, is that most things happen via email, sometimes via fax, again on the phone. What we've essentially done is we've created a space where folks are able to, at least on our side, provide some sort of transparency when a member is balance billed. So how does a member get balance billed in the United States healthcare system? So let's say they go in and receive their care. This is a non-emergency care. Maybe it's just a general checkup. Maybe they discover a few things that requires a few more additional testing. and the group health plan has paid a certain percentage of Medicare or has paid a reference point, whatever that may be. And the provider says, well, wait a minute, am I am used to receiving X amount of dollars from other payers or other insurance companies. We charge $10,000, and we want that full $10,000. We don't want the $5,000 that the plan has paid. So the provider sends a bill out to the patient that says you owe the remaining $5,000. That balance is a balance bill. And so this is something that plagues our American healthcare system. When folks do not pay their balance bill, it can be sent to a debt collector, and a debt collector can become very aggressive when billing. And then ultimately it could end up in a lawsuit, depending on the amount of money, or it could end up on a credit report. So in the United States, there are three credit furnishers, TransUnion, Equifax, Experian, and it could have serious impact on folks' ability to make a car purchase or to make to purchase a new home, or other kind, or take out a personal loan, which those kinds of credit reporting activities would impact. And that's because of medical necessary or medical kind of treatment, which is what exactly we try to avoid. So one of the important things that Billing Nav here has done is try to remove the process from email and put it into a central tech-enabled platform that enables not only transparency, but also has some limited AI functionality, mostly seen on the back end. So our team of negotiators that I work with, and my team, will receive a balance bill, and we'll use some simple technology such as OCR. Currently, we're plugged into OpenAI's API. And of course, this is possible within the healthcare system. When you sign a BAA, you ensure you have the highest level of security. And when dealing with personal health information, it's really important that you're not just uploading things to ChatGPT, right? So when you're sharing I'm going to just share my screen here. When you're using ChatGPT, folks can't just upload certain documentation to this kind of stuff. You need to make sure you have a secure environment. And I'm working on a book right now for the American Arbitration Association with a colleague, Chris Draper, who some of you may know, where we're talking about kind of what are the parameters on using artificial intelligence safely. And there's a book that we've written as well that's available on Amazon, which I'm happy to share the link. But I think one thing that is really important when we talk about using artificial intelligence, and particularly dispute resolution, when you're dealing with such sensitive information. In the United States, we have HIPAA, which is protects health related information. You have to be very sensitive to that. When you're working on large arbitrations where it's involving millions and billions of dollars or euros, it's domestic violence, or it's serious family matters in mediation, you have to make sure that you're using a lot of those safeguards. So there's a book that I'm happy to share the link about. And I think one more thing too is a company that Chris and I are working on. It's called Morgan, Morrigan AI, and we're deploying a tool that you can download and you can understand what your employees or what your team members or what your associates at a law firm are perhaps dumping into a tool like ChatGPT, and then are, perhaps revealing company secrets or really valuable company data, and essentially kind of willy-nilly giving this to companies such as Claude, Google, Meta, or OpenAI, and you're better able to safeguard that. So I think when you think about deploying AI tools in a healthcare setting, but really anywhere, particularly those that are bar admit or those that are protecting sensitive information as a neutral, you want to be careful around what those safeguards are, and how you're kind of being a good steward of folks' data. I think also one thing too is with the increase of ChatGPT, we want to be really careful about what we as neutrals and mediators and even advocates are putting into these kinds of tools. As a profession, we've essentially decided, I think, like much of the world, that email is a tool that is within the normal course of business. But email is probably one of the most unsecure, awful tools to use. Unless you're using, a multi-factor authentication to send an email, a secure email like through Microsoft Outlook. It has a lot of vulnerability. That is very similar to the use of ChatGPT. And I think as neutrals, we do have an ethical obligation to reveal if we are using ChatGPT, if we are producing something in writing to them. Now, if we are using large language models such as ChatGPT as our own, as a tool to help us prepare for a case, and we're not necessarily dumping the identifiable information, I think this is where a lot of folks, may disagree. But also, I think we're starting to get guidelines from Supreme Courts and other governing bodies within our profession. Is it may not require a full disclosure, because in the way that you use LexisNexis or Westlaw to, cite previous to understand, what laws pertain to the matters you're going to be dealing with. Most neutrals I know don't say and start off in mediation or arbitration saying, "Hey, by the way, I looked at LexisNexis before that," or "Hey, by the way, I also use Microsoft Outlook, to send an email to them." I think using a large language model, depending on how you use it and how you prepare for the tribunal or the meeting or the convening of resolving a dispute, I think it requires best judgment, and I think it requires some consideration. And so, if I can also stop right here in case we want to have a conversation around what some of those ethical considerations are when using AI, and it's not only within a healthcare context, but as a neutral, these are important things we do want to consider.
Yeah, I would add some other things to that. Um, I wrote an article on this. One of the problems with large language models, in particular OpenAI, is they're trained in a way to please the user. So there's a big risk of confirmation bias
Yep.
using these tools, right? So in other words, I could go to something like ChatGPT and say, I have this great idea. I invented a way to get a man to the moon. I just slingshot him to the moon. So the answer from ChatGPT that's fantastic will change transportation forever. Here's the things you do, right?
Yeah.
So it'll give you an answer that kind of satisfies both the question and the user. And
Yeah.
so you have to be very careful to always ask the next question, which is what's wrong with this answer?
Yeah.
What are the things if you ask both questions, you can avoid the problem of confirmation bias. But a lot of people just consider ChatGPT their friend and run the risk of always having something that agrees with them, which then becomes kind of a digital echo chamber, which is which I think is just a greater risk for neutrals. So
Bob, that's such a great point. And I work with the University of California Law School in San Francisco. We're working on something called Negociabot, NEGOBOT.ai. We're working on creating a training tool for law schools and business schools that focuses more on a distributive or a zero-sum approach to negotiating. Because I was at a conference recently that talks about particularly OpenAI, ChatGPT, and large language models that is trained on all of this Fisher and Urey, getting to yes, right? How do we expand the pie? How do we get collaborative? How do we
exactly.
how do we and like candidly, when you think about ChatGPT, and forgive me for wandering into this, but it impacts language and the way we speak as well. ChatGPT is very much a mild manner, kind of center left Democrat, like a Tim Walz like of language. It doesn't necessarily spit out something like a Donald Trump or Elon Musk. The language that these large language models use and are trained on is much more academic or center left. And that is something we have to acknowledge and consider when using these kinds of tools. Bob, it looks like, or if someone was going to say something. But so anyway, so like these are the kinds of considerations we always need to take on. So if folks are interested in being early users of a training tool around distributive zero sum, I'm happy to. I'll put my email in the chat, but would love to have your guys' feedback on building that initial tool, because as many of us know, and our arbitration experts, and Daniel knows as well, when you're negotiating between a provider and a payer, is that a lot of times negotiations are not kumbaya and are not collaborative. People want their money, or people feel wronged, and people need to and maybe people don't care about the relationship. And when you use large language models and you're seeking advice, I think Bob's point around really rigorously questioning the results is really important, because when I ask ChatGPT for advice on negotiations, it says, well, you should be transparent about what your bottom line is. As most negotiators know, if you reveal what the bottom line is, you may have set yourself up for failure. That's not a very good negotiation tactic. You have to, anchor it. You have to allow for, and again, I don't want to be didactic for many of the folks here that are already master and expert negotiators, and so folks know how to negotiate. But what I worry about when younger generations or folks that are not trained in negotiation and dispute resolution, and they lean on large language models, as Bob pointed out and has written about, and Bob, feel free to post that article in the chat, is it may not have your best interest. And you have to really rigorously question kind of what those results are. I think one major thing, oh, Bob, go ahead.
Yeah, now one of the other things for certain kinds of negotiations, especially for neutrals, one of the things we implemented was the adjusted winner algorithm, which comes from game theory on fair asset division, and we found that to be a useful starting point for negotiations. And so, but again, a lot of the stuff is not necessarily AI. AI by itself, because large language models are, you have to realize that they are essentially kind of reverse engineering of the way humans use language. And therefore, it's not about knowledge, it's about pattern recognition. And so you have to just take it with a grain of salt, always look at the other side of it, and combine it with other things that are more analytical. And I think that's kind of the approach we took, is that by itself, it's interesting, but if you combine it with certain kinds of analytics, you'll get a much better result.
Yeah. No, I think that's absolutely right. And I think, being able to understanding, oh, someone has their hand up. Feel free to jump in.
Hi, Simon. Thank you very much. And thank you, Bob, as always, for the elucidation. I think I just want to agree with you that it's so much as whoever has set up the app that you're using and the biases that are already inbuilt that will always determine what you will get, just like Bob had said. And I just want to wade in and just say that.
No, I think that's really great, and I completely agree. And feel free, I think it's a really worthy conversation to have that applies to the healthcare sector and a lot of regulatory or heavy regulated industries. Is discussing these kinds of ethical considerations, not over relying on a large language model when you're unsure about the data that has been trained on. I think if you guys haven't checked out Bob's tool, Next Level, and what he's been doing, and Bob, feel free to put that in the chat so folks, can also kind of.
We have actually, some of us Next Level.
Okay.
we've been working with Bob for some time. We've even had some of our neutrals train on, so we're
That's
quite conversant with it.
Bob has been around for a long time and is a living legend. So it's always a bit intimidating, when you're presenting in front of Bob. But we'll try to power through that. But um, any other kind of thoughts or considerations around these ethical? Yes, go ahead.
I just wanted actually to ask for Bob's article, and I think that you've just added a link, Bob, that concerns your article. So thank you. But it's fascinating, really. I'm not familiar with this world of medical care and all the wonderful work you're doing. And the dispute resolution actually in the healthcare is extremely important. We should learn to do the same in France and in Europe. Thank you. Sorry.
I'm going to bring up one more point because I just published this yesterday. There's with AI agents, we have a new set of problems coming for online dispute resolution. That is working with digital workers. And, if you're all of a sudden involved in a mediation where one of the players was actually a digital worker,
Yeah.
with no inherent conscious or intent, then we have another set of issues that people have not been paying attention to. And a lot of companies, in particular, I wrote about I think it was Morgan Stanley or Mellon. They have implemented several hundred digital workers who do different things, actually have email logins or managed by somebody, and they look like workers, except they're digital agents. And so this brings in another whole level of complexity, I think, to dispute resolution, because you're going to find yourself talking to some digital worker. Okay.
Yeah. Well, and I think in the healthcare sector, bringing it back to that topic, Bob, because that's really important, is that when you're dealing with such sensitive information and you're dealing with HIPAA in the United States and other related, I'm sure, EU protections for patient and healthcare data, is you have to have a human in the loop kind of system. And that's just fundamental for healthcare. And I think Microsoft just released that they have this AI tool that can predict, someone's health better than a doctor 4 times, whatever the metric was, 4 times better than a human it may be. And so I think that you're going to notice on the clinical, on the patient journey side, these AI tools that I worry ultimately are going to inhibit a human intervening. But when you look at hospital systems in the United States, particularly that are owned by private equity companies and are still able to maintain their nonprofit status through these crazy loopholes and these lawyers that set up all these crazy kinds of rules and regulations, the pressure for payers to demand nothing but what the billed amount is and to not negotiate or to negotiate in bad faith. That is something I see on the horizon in the US healthcare system. I think when you look at a cross-cultural component for other similar healthcare systems that may not have a well-regulated components, such as in the European Union or in Canada, where there are greater regulations, you're going to see kind of healthcare potentially really spiral, and humans are going to be negotiating against AI agents. We're noticing trends in the United States where a lot of customer support call centers are firing folks in mass. How do you negotiate against an AI agent when there's no human or you're not enabled to escalate that? I think that creates real access to justice questions that we are just starting to grapple with. That I don't know if our current regime of regulators and politicians are prepared to handle. And the very first company I built was called Magnify, which focused on adhesion contracts. So when you press I agree, you have tucked away in that I agree, is a 60 to 100 page document, legal binding document that you have to agree to, or you can't, use your cell phone, or you can't use your whatever it may be. And it really screws the consumer, pardon my language, but it really does not enable a powerful, and from, what I hold so element to my core as a peace builder, is it doesn't level the playing field for one party to negotiate in good faith with the other. It creates an imbalance. And so, Bob, I'm glad you shared that article as well. So be sure to check those out. And I think, you know, be rigorous in who you're talking to. We've actually trained some of our employees to ask questions that do not relate to the negotiation to see if they're talking to an AI agent. For example, what's the square root of 3,594? And if the person on the phone is able to answer that really quickly with some sort of, or some sort of thing, they're probably, not talking to a human. And also, you also just have to ask them directly, am I talking to an AI agent? Ethically, and I think depending on the rules, I know for sure in the European Union, an AI agent would have to reveal that. I'm not sure in the United States what those rules are, but certainly I think from a corporate perspective and a public relations perspective, it's not a good look if you're talking to, a United or a Delta or American Airlines and they lie, saying that they're not. So also speak candidly around those things as well. But Daniel, you unmuted yourself. I don't know if you have some thoughts or want to jump in.
Yes, thank you so much. I think the bigger issue is who is controlling the narrative. Because when you look at AI, it seems to be more business oriented than really human oriented. And I think that's the biggest challenge now we are having, whereby AI may give you the answers, but I think the other question is, it's almost like the emotions are not there.
Yeah.
It's so focused on maybe resolving the issue, but it doesn't want to know what is happening behind the scenes. And if you can remember, one of the things about mediation is you let the other person tell their story so that you can find what are the issues, what is the elephant in the room. And AI is like boom, 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 here you go. And I think to me that's a challenge. Hopefully it's still evolving. Hopefully it will be better where it consider that it's dealing with human beings and not just simply spitting out the answers that maybe people are expecting.
Thank you, Daniel. I think that's a good point to look at. I think what we could also look is to try and demarcate, as it were, things that we can probably deploy ODR in the health sector to, and other things that, as Simon has said, are a no-no, and see how we can probably maybe very simple issues that are identifiable. And it would be like when we started with ODR and you had to just tick a box. So it would just be more like a box thing and not necessarily as advanced as AI. Because when we then delve into the sphere of using AI and trying to use AI to replace the human, as Simon and Bob had said, then we run into problems, because it will be the narrative, as you also have put forward, of whoever it is that set up and how the machine has been trained. And of course, that's what we will get.
I think that's such a great point. And I think one thing too, where just to add on, and I know we're kind of coming up close to time and I want to have enough space for questions, but one really important point I want to drive home is that pre-dispute resolution. And I'm sure if Bob has spoken here and other folks have spoken, preventing disputes and the role ODR plays in that is probably the next frontier, right? I mean, we have this AI kind of and large language models that I think will actually, I believe, help in some way in access to justice if used the right way and folks are trained the right way to help, for example, send their boss a better email than kind of just swearing at them, perhaps, right? Can using large language models and asking the chat GPT to say, hey, can you rewrite this language or rewrite this email or letter to my boss or to my landlord or to my tenant in a more collaborative, less confrontational way. I think there's some real capabilities there. In a healthcare text, again, sorry, just bringing it back to our topic, is at least in the United States, if for nonprofit hospitals, you have to have a financial assistance policy. This is required through the IRS, I believe Obamacare as well. And you can help to eliminate a balance bill need by seeing if your income meets a certain threshold, and then also reaching out to the hospital. It's a method of pre-dispute resolution. I hope folks, would consider uploading that kind of FAP policy to a chat GPT, understanding what are the next steps they need to do, but also going into the document, asking a large language model for evidence. Because again, going back to the risk of using a large language model is that they can hallucinate and it can make things up. So you want to ask the tool and then also verify and double check. So I think one major takeaway, again, is if you're going to use these large language models, understand the risks, always question it, but it's a tool in your toolbox. As a good neutral, as a good dispute resolution practitioner, you do not want to over rely on one tool. You always want to go in and do the work as well. And that's really important. Let me stop right there. I know who has maybe some more feedback or questions.
Well, I just want to add to what you said and just say, well, ODL for us should be the fourth party along neutral. I think that will be the best way to deal with ODR, AI, and all the tools that we are constantly faced with as neutrals that we need to work with. Thank you.
That's exactly right.
Okay. On my part, I think on the same, when we were speaking about AI, I think when you're speaking about the bias it has, from my position here in Kenya, I can see that at times when I'm searching for things on it, it has a tendency to refer me to maybe something that is more US or European based, and it doesn't really fit my context at times. But at the same time, in regards to its positives, I've heard you speak about the emails, and I am a person who can actually testify on it writing better emails at times. So thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I think I train and we were talking about this right before folks got on what is not known about me, but I train a lot of a fair amount of judges and arbitrators and mediators in a private capacity for kind of using large language models and the ethical implications and considerations. But it is ChatGPT, the paid version, and others, it's like a high-powered associate. You have to give it context. You have to be concise. You have to provide enough information to use it accurately, right? And so if you're not looking for US answers, you got to say, well, and how does this relate in a more Kenyan perspective? Or how does this work in a more Nigerian perspective? And then also, I think uploading documents as well. I think from like a very practical use case of this is when you're creating kind of a new project and you're able to upload documentations around there. I think also creating custom GPTs as well can be a really powerful tool. But for a lot of neutrals, creating your own project by the number dispute, number, 001, something that could be practical for Daniel, especially during the life cycle of a dispute, is you can also train it to advise you on some of these tools. And I think paired with the tool like what Bob has done, which a more analytical tool, you could be using these large language models in a next level in a more kind of thoughtful and analytical way. So something to think about. I don't know if folks have other experiences or cautionary tales as well.
Yeah, just one more. I put another article in. One of the big issues is there was a recent experiment at MIT on with college students, both from Harvard and MIT, on writing essays. One group using AI, another group not supposed to use AI. And when they were finished, they both had great essays. except when people asked students who used AI to quote one sentence from their essay, they couldn't.
Yeah.
And so there is a potential for loss of cognitive skills, like any technology. And that's something you have to find the right balance for. And this goes back to what Simon was saying before about responsible use, because just like when we invented calculators, people forgot how to do math, or spell check, people forgot how to spell. We have the same risk using tools like AI, that there'll be a loss of cognitive skills if we depend too much on it. And I just wanted to put that in there.
Thank you, Bob. But I was just thinking, so what would you recommend? What could we as professionals, what could we champion as a way around this challenge? Because yes, I agree completely with you that um we're losing our cognitive skills. And particularly I've been at meetings with a lot of professors, and it's like the same complaint generally for most people. What could be a solution, a possible solution?
I think the possible solution is to put AI in a category of assistant, right? Assistant in the context of helping you perform a specific job, which might be help you, resolve a specific dispute, but not to replace your, as Simon was saying, replace your own ability to analyze what's going on, have your own opinion, look at it almost as, a second opinion,
Yeah.
as opposed to depending completely on it, just like you would go
Supposed to
to a
be
doc.
the only opinion.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like you would go to another doctor, get a second opinion, right? So if you put them in that category of, second opinion, whatever, then I think you'll try to find the right balance.
Yeah. I think one of the nice things too is we are all in the profession of what I believe is humans' greatest skill, being able to listen and resolve disputes and bring people together. Peace building has been around since humans have been around. And
Yeah.
I think the skills that we carry forth, I think it's not necessarily can we be replaced, it's can we be imitated, and replicated. And I think at its current juncture and where we are with the technology now is the ability to be creative, the ability to proactively listen, the ability to look someone in the eyes and understand hurt and understand feelings. That's something uniquely fit for peace builders and people on this call. And so I think to us, it's more about how we augment, as Bob said, and how we think about how we can leverage it as a tool in our toolbox. But at the end of the day, showing up in person or showing up on a Zoom call to resolve a dispute, that is the role of a human.
So thank you so much, Simon. Thank you for this interactive session. It's Every 501. I would like to call the chairman of the advisory board, Mires, to do the vote of thanks. Help us thank Simon.
Thank you. I think that this knowledge sharing has been really fascinating. I agree so much with all that has been said, of course, by Simon, but also by Bob, Daniel, and Morenike. We are all aware about the issues we face on the ground. So it's not just a usual facts and typical facts that the artificial intelligence and ChatGPT propose us. We are aware of the downsides of ChatGPT, of the human aspect given to of the human aspects that we can give to humans. And I love what Simon just said. The human greatest skills, and this cannot be replaced or imitated or replicated. It's so true. I mean, this has to be replicated. Those words have to be replicated everywhere to make people aware about the downsides. It is just a tool that we can use, but it can never replace the abilities of human beings to come up with solutions, with new ideas, and also be sensible towards people, hear the facts, the context of a case. It's not just, typical case and we apply typical rules like a drop-down menu. It's something that we need to consider all the time. So we may be happy about us not being replaceable, and we need to really highlight this issue to many people. And thank you also, Bob, for bringing forward all these issues and for the articles. I just downloaded them and I will read them about AI. So we need to remind people, because everyone is excited about AI, ChatGPT. It's the trend, it's everywhere, we should rely on it. No, you need to remain you need to remain aware about the fact that it is only a tool. It's helpful, but it can never replace us. So thank you so much, Simon. Thank you so much, Bob, Daniel, and Morenike, for the comments you have made. And I fully agree with every single word you said. Thank you.
Thank you so much for inviting me, and I look forward to listening and participating for future sessions, and it was such a delight. And I dropped my email. Feel free to send me an email or whatever, and stay in touch. Or if you want to bounce ideas around or build something. So just thank you so much. It was a real honor.
Thank you.
And we'll be in touch to work with your students' negotiation. We can see if we can get a group to work with you on that also.
Yeah, we'd love that. We're just building the tool with the UC Law, and any folks who want to test it or student, whatever it may be, just please email me. Would love to.
Okay, that would be great. Thanks, Ms. As always, Bob. Everyone.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Nice seeing you. Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.